Harland Duke had no idea the woman struggling with a stack of boxes outside the downtown brownstone was a millionaire. He just knew she looked like she needed help, and he couldn't walk past her with his 6-year-old daughter watching. "Daddy, she's gonna drop him," Elodie whispered, tugging on his hand as they approached the building. "I see it, sweetheart," he said, already moving faster. The woman let out a tiny yelp as one of the boxes tipped forward. Harland reached out just in time, steadying the top before it could tumble. "Whoa there," he said, catching her eye. "You moving in or trying to break your back?" She laughed, brushing a strand of dark hair from her face. "A little of both, apparently, thank you." Her voice was low, warm. Her cheeks were flushed, either from the cold or embarrassment. Harland adjusted the top box, nodding toward the door. "You got someone helping you inside?" She hesitated. "No, it's just me," he exhaled, glanced down at Elodie. "You okay to hang out here for a second, kiddo?" Elodie gave a solemn nod, plopping onto the stoop with her backpack and a juice box like she did this every day. "I'm Harland," he said, shifting the boxes to his hip. "Faye," she replied. "Faye Owens. Nice to meet you, Faye." "Which floor?" "Third. No elevator." He groaned dramatically. "You're really trying to kill yourself today, huh?" Faye laughed again, and Harland followed her inside. The staircase was narrow, the walls freshly painted, probably a new renovation. It smelled like fresh sawdust and lemon cleaner. By the time they reached her apartment, he was sweating. She unlocked the door, and he stepped into a space that looked like it belonged on a home magazine cover, sleek furniture still half wrapped in plastic, a large window overlooking the park, and a kitchen island that probably cost more than his truck. "You sure you're in the right place?" he teased. "Because this doesn't scream struggling box carrier." Faye smiled, but something flickered behind her eyes. "I'm just a little in between things right now." He didn't push. Everyone had their stuff back downstairs. Elodie was swinging her feet and humming. "All good?" she asked brightly. "All good," Harland said, ruffling her hair. Faye followed them out, her steps slower now. "Thank you again, really, I would have dropped everything." "No problem," Harland said. "I don't usually make a habit of rescuing strangers, but you looked like you were 2 seconds from disaster." Faye grinned. "Thanks again, Harland." He nodded and turned to go, but her voice stopped him. "Wait, do you guys live around here?" "Couple blocks away," he answered. "Why? I'm new to the city. I don't really know anyone." She glanced at Elodie. "It was nice talking to you both." Harland raised his brows. "You're not from here originally?" "No, just moved from Boston." He gave a low whistle. "Welcome to New York." "Thanks," she said, pulling her coat tighter. "If you're ever nearby again, I owe you coffee." He didn't say yes. He didn't say no either. Over the next few weeks, they ran into each other more than once. Once at the grocery store, once at the park where Elodie played, and again outside the local bakery. The third time, she bought him a croissant and sat beside him on the bench while Elodie chased pigeons. "So," Faye asked, sipping her coffee, "what do you do?" Harland didn't sugarcoat it. "Construction, mostly residential. It's been slow lately, but I pick up gigs where I can." She nodded like she understood, but there was something unreadable in her eyes. "Do you like it?" "I like feeding my kid," he said. "That's what matters." Faye looked at Elodie, who was now shrieking with joy as a pigeon flapped close. "She's amazing." "She is," Harland agreed, watching his daughter with pride. "Her mom left when she was 2, just me and her since." Faye turned to him, something softer in her gaze now. "That must have been hard," he shrugged. "We manage. I don't have much, but I've got her, and she's everything." There was silence for a beat. Then Faye said, "You're a good dad, Harland." He didn't know why that sentence hit so hard, maybe because he didn't hear it enough. Maybe because it came from her. They started seeing more of each other after that. Faye would show up at the park with 2 coffees. Harland would swing by her building after picking Elodie up from school. One afternoon, he helped install a ceiling fan in her apartment, and she made him pasta that tasted like something out of a 5-star restaurant. "Where'd you learn to cook like this?" he asked, twirling his fork. Faye shrugged. "Boarding school, and a lot of expensive mistakes." He laughed, but she didn't elaborate further. That was Faye. Sharp, kind, guarded. Still, there was something between them growing fast like a spark that never left once it caught. One cold Friday night, he found her sitting on her stoop, a huge gift bag beside her. "What's this?" Harland asked. Faye stood, brushing snow off her coat. For Elodie, I saw this little coat in a shop window and couldn't stop thinking about her in it. He blinked. Faye, you didn't need to, she's your whole world, I know that. Let me give her something. He opened the bag and found a deep plum winter coat with a faux fur hood, sleek boots, and little gloves that matched. Everything looked expensive, too expensive. Faye, he said again, quieter this time. This must have cost, I wanted to, she said, her voice steady. Please don't say no, he searched her face. Are you sure about this? Yes, he nodded slowly. Okay, thank you. The next morning, Elodie put it all on and spun in front of the mirror, beaming. She's a princess, Faye said when she saw her. Harland couldn't stop staring at Faye. One night after dinner at her place, while Elodie colored at the table, Faye leaned in close. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you always help strangers with boxes? He smiled. Only the pretty ones, she laughed, but her voice was quiet. I'm glad you stopped that day. Me too, he said, and before he could overthink it, he kissed her. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't wild. It was soft, like finally exhaling. Faye pulled back, her hand touching his face. I think I'm falling for you, Harland. His heart stuttered. He didn't say anything, because he was already there. Harland didn't sleep that night. Not because he was restless, not because of the snow tapping against the window, but because Faye's words kept echoing through his mind. I think I'm falling for you, Harland. He'd never had anyone say that to him without expecting something in return, and certainly not a woman like her. She was elegant without effort, intelligent in a way that didn't try to impress, and had a way of looking at him like he was more than just a man trying to keep his head above water. She looked at him like he mattered. The next day, she surprised him again. He'd just picked Elodie up from her friend's birthday party when he saw the sleek black car parked outside their building. It didn't belong in their neighborhood. The polished sedan gleamed under the dull winter sun, and the driver dressed in a sharp black coat stood by the rear door like he was waiting for royalty. Harland's chest tightened. Daddy, Elodie shouted, tugging his sleeve. That's Miss Faye. Faye stepped out of the car, wearing a long wool coat cinched at the waist, her dark hair pulled into a low twist. She looked completely out of place on their cracked sidewalk framed by rusting fences and a flickering street lamp. He took a breath and walked over. Planning a heist? He asked, glancing at the car. She laughed softly. I needed to see you. I wasn't sure if you'd come by today. I was going to. Her eyes flicked to Elodie. Hey, sweetheart. Elodie ran to her, hugging her around the waist. You look like you're going to a castle. Faye knelt down, smiling. It's just a coat, baby, but thanks. Harland waited until Elodie skipped inside with a neighbor before he spoke. Faye, what's with the car? She squared her shoulders. There's something I need to tell you. And I didn't want to do it standing on a stoop. He hesitated. Is this about last night? It's about everything. Her voice was calm, but her hands fidgeted. Can we talk? Somewhere private. He looked at the car again. You want me to get in that? She gave a small nod. I promise it's not what you think. He ran a hand through his hair, glanced back toward the building, then stepped forward and opened the door. The inside smelled like leather and faint perfume. It was warm, too warm, and he couldn't stop noticing how out of place his work boots looked against the plush carpeted floor. Faye sat across from him, her posture stiff. You're not just new to the city, he said quietly, are you? No, okay, he leaned back. So what's the truth? She folded her hands in her lap, stared at them like they might start speaking for her. My last name isn't Owens, it's Devereux, he frowned. That's supposed to mean something to me. My family owns Devereux Holdings. Real estate, private equity, luxury development. We're. Her voice faltered. We're very public and very wealthy. He stared at her. You're a Devereux, as in, the Devereux Towers on 5th. Yes, a beat past Jesus, he muttered, rubbing his jaw. So all this time you were just pretending to be like the rest of us. No, her voice cracked. I wasn't pretending. I left all that behind. I walked away from it. Why? Because it's toxic. My family, they don't value people. They value power, control, appearances. I couldn't breathe in that world anymore. He shook his head slowly, trying to process. I didn't lie to you, Harland. Not to hurt you, I just wanted to live like a normal person, to see what it felt like to make real connections. I didn't expect to meet you. I didn't expect to fall for you. He looked at her, something tightening in his chest. So what happens now? You tell me the truth and then disappear back into your world with chauffeurs and private chefs. No. Her eyes met his, fierce and unwavering. I don't want to go back. I want to be with you. I don't belong in that world, Faye. That world doesn't belong to me anymore either. Silence stretched between them. I know this is a lot, she said softly. I know it's unfair, but I needed you to know the truth. I couldn't keep building something with you based on a lie. He studied her face. The woman he'd kissed last night wasn't some heiress playing games. She was scared, vulnerable, and honest finally. You should have told me sooner. I know. I don't care about your money, he said. But I care that you didn't trust me with the truth. I was afraid, she whispered. He looked away, hands clenched. I've spent my whole life being invisible to people like you. I see you, Harland. I always have. He didn't answer. The driver pulled up to her building without a word. She reached for the door handle but paused. I'll give you space, she said. But I'm not giving up on us. He watched her walk into the building, the door closing behind her like a wall rising between two worlds. Days passed. He didn't call her. She didn't show up at the park. The silence was louder than any argument they could have had. Elodie asked about her, of course, but Harland just said she was busy, and maybe she was. Maybe she'd gone back to her family, back to the world where people like him were footnotes. But then, one evening, he came home to find a letter tucked under his door. No envelope, just a folded note with his name in her handwriting. He opened it slowly. There was no apology, no plea, just an address and a time, Saturday. 7 o'clock. He almost didn't go. But something in the quiet way she'd looked at him before stepping out of the car haunted him, so he showed up. It was an unassuming building in Tribeca. No name on the door, just a buzzer. He pressed it. A moment later, it clicked open. Inside, the hallway smelled like cedar and aged paper. A private art gallery by the looks of it. Minimalist paintings lined the walls. A single table sat in the center of the room, set for two, under a canopy of twinkling lights strung across the ceiling. Faye stood behind the table, wearing a simple navy dress and no jewelry. Her hair was down, soft around her shoulders. You came, she said, her voice trembling. I almost didn't, I know, she gestured to the table. I wanted to show you something. This gallery, it belonged to my grandmother. She used to bring in unknown artists, people no one else would give a chance. She believed in things before the world told her they were worth it. He looked around. It's beautiful. She left it to me when she died. It's the only part of my inheritance I didn't walk away from. She turned to him. I want to open it again, make it something real, but I can't do it alone. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to be part of my life, not the life I had, the one I'm building, with you. He stepped closer, his voice low. You think a man like me fits in this kind of place? I don't want someone who fits, she said. I want someone who makes it better. The lights above them flickered slightly, casting golden shadows across the walls. I don't have anything to offer you, Faye, he said. No fancy suits, no legacy. Just a little girl and a toolbox. Then you have everything I need. He didn't kiss her right away. He just stood there watching her. The girl who shed millions to be seen. The woman who chose him. And then he closed the space between them, not because he forgave everything, but because he believed her now, and that was enough to start again. The gallery opened 2 weeks later under a soft, amber glow and a new name etched in brass, Marigold House. Harland didn't ask why she chose it. Faye didn't explain. But there was something about the way her fingers lingered on the plaque that told him it mattered. He wasn't sure what his place was in all of it. He wasn't an artist. He wasn't from that world, but Faye made space for him anyway. She brought him to planning meetings, asked his opinion on things like layout, lighting, even the food they'd serve at the reception. She listened when he spoke, even when he wasn't sure he was saying the right thing. You don't have to keep including me in every decision, he said one evening, rolling up the last of the drop cloths after helping repaint the interior. I'm not exactly qualified. I don't want someone qualified, she said, standing barefoot on the marble tile with a paint streak on her cheek. I want someone honest. He hadn't known how much he needed to hear that. Elodie started calling Faye her almost person. Harland didn't press for clarification. He figured if it meant something to his daughter, that was enough, but not everything was as easy as it looked. The night of the opening, Harland stood in front of the mirror in the apartment, tugging at the collar of the only suit he owned. It was years old, a little tight in the shoulders. He shaved twice, still feeling like he didn't belong in it. Elodie watched him from the couch, her legs swinging off the edge. "Are you nervous?" she asked. "Maybe a little." "Why?" He glanced at her in the mirror. "Because sometimes grown-ups feel small in big rooms." "Will Faye be there?" "Yeah." "She will." Lodi nodded like that was all she needed to know. When they arrived, the gallery was already full. People in tailored coats and crystal earrings sipped from fluted glasses. The air buzzed with the kind of polite laughter Harland had only heard at work functions he wasn't invited to stay for. And then he saw Faye. She stood near the center of the room, wearing midnight blue, her back straight, her arms relaxed at her sides. But her eyes were scanning the crowd like she was looking for something, or someone. When she saw him, her whole face changed. "I was starting to think you wouldn't come," she said, pulling him aside, her hand warm on his. "I almost didn't." "Why?" He met her eyes. "Because it's hard to walk into a world that thinks you're just visiting." She stepped closer. "You're not visiting, you're part of this." He didn't answer, but the knot in his chest loosened slightly. Elodie darted away, enraptured by the snacks and the art and the way everyone kept smiling at her. Harland watched her weave through the legs of strangers like she'd been born for it. "She's not afraid of any of this," he said. "She's fearless," Faye agreed. "She gets that from you." He turned to her. "What happens when your family finds out you opened this without them?" "They already know," she said. "My brother showed up 2 days ago, said I was reckless for doing something without board approval." "He said that?" Faye nodded. "I told him he could either support it or stay out of my way." Harland raised his eyebrows. "And?" He left. He let out a low whistle. "You really don't pull punches, do you?" "No," she said. "Not anymore." Later that night, when the gallery had emptied and the lights were dimmed, they walked in silence through the space. Elodie had fallen asleep in one of the plush chairs near the back, her coat draped over her like a blanket. Faye glanced at her. "She's going to remember this, isn't she?" "I hope so." Faye hesitated. "I want her to be part of everything. I want you both to have more than just visits and quick dinners. I want something real." Harland looked at her. "You're talking like this is permanent." "It is." "If you want it to be," he exhaled slowly. "You sure about that? You're not just caught up in all this?" She shook her head. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." They didn't kiss, not that night, but when they left the gallery, she slipped her fingers into his and didn't let go. The next week, she showed up outside his building with a clipboard and a look of quiet determination. "I found a place," she said. Harland blinked. "What kind of place?" "For you and Elodie. It's not far, still in the neighborhood, just safer, bigger. With a second bedroom that doesn't have a leaky radiator." He crossed his arms. "Faye, I'm not buying you a penthouse," she cut in, "but I want her to have a room with sunlight. And I want you to sleep without worrying about the ceiling caving in. I can't let you do that." "You're not letting me. I'm doing it. You can either move in or keep trying to fix cracked plaster with duct tape." He stared at her, torn between pride and disbelief. "You really don't take no for an answer." "Not when I know what's right." He didn't fight her. Not because he agreed with everything, but because he knew it wasn't about money. It was about her seeing them, really seeing them, and choosing to do something about it. The new apartment wasn't flashy. It had creaky floors and a view of a fire escape, but the kitchen worked and the heater didn't rattle. Elodie painted the wall of her new room with stars, and Faye helped, barefoot on a drop cloth, humming under her breath. One night while Harland was fixing a loose cabinet door, Faye leaned in the doorway, arms crossed. "I've been thinking," she said. "Dangerous." She rolled her eyes. "I want to show you something." He straightened. "What?" She reached into her coat and pulled out a folded brochure. "There's a property upstate. Old building, used to be a school. It's been empty for years. I want to buy it." "To do what?" "Turn it into a retreat for kids, single parents, people who need a break but can't afford one." He stared at her. "You serious?" "I have the means, you have the vision. We could build something together." He didn't answer right away. He looked around at the new apartment, at the half-finished cabinet, at the girl painting stars in the next room. "You really think we could pull something like that off?" "I think we already have," she said. He didn't say yes. But the next morning, he started looking at blueprints. They weren't perfect. They didn't always agree. She liked plans. He liked instinct. She drank her coffee black. He dumped half a cup of sugar in his. But the life they were building didn't need to be flawless. It just needed to be theirs. And for the first time in a long time, Harland believed they could have that. Not because of luck. but because she chose him, and he chose her right back. The wind howled through the pine trees as Harland stepped out of the car. The tires crunched over the gravel drive, the air sharp with the scent of cold earth and distant wood smoke. He could see his breath with every exhale. Faye stood beside him, wrapped in a thick coat, her boots sinking slightly into the old, frost-covered soil. In front of them stood the building, the old school she'd found. It was quiet and solid, its stone walls dulled by rain and time, tall windows blank and watching. The paint on the doors had peeled decades ago, and ivy had crept up the sides like nature was reclaiming it 1 inch at a time. Harland adjusted the strap on his shoulder and glanced at her. "You really think this place can be turned into something?" Faye didn't hesitate. "No, I know it." She walked ahead, unlatching the rusted gate. He followed her through, his boots leaving prints beside hers. Inside, the air was thick with dust and silence. The old wooden floors groaned under their weight. A long corridor stretched ahead, its walls lined with faded locker doors and crooked light fixtures. Faye's voice echoed softly. "When I was a kid, I used to dream about owning a place like this. Somewhere that didn't care about money or last names, just people, just stories." He stepped into what used to be a classroom, now nothing but warped floorboards and a few broken desks stacked in the corner. "It's got bones," he said. "Good bones." "I want to start with the West Wing," she said, pulling unfolded plans from her bag and laying them across one of the desks. Her fingers moved across the paper like she could already see it: bedrooms, open studios, a garden courtyard. "We can bring in the contractors next week, and I've already lined up a few local artisans who'd love to teach classes here." He looked over her shoulder. "You've been busy." Faye turned to him. "I want this to move forward. I want it to mean something." He nodded slowly. "It will." By spring, the transformation had begun. The roof was replaced, the walls re-insulated, and sunlight poured into rooms that had been dark for years. Faye handled the business end meetings with city officials, permits, supplier negotiations, while Harland took on the physical labor. He rebuilt floorboards, installed lighting, rewired ancient systems, and brought in volunteers from the neighborhood. Elodie came up on weekends, always with a list of ideas. "We should put hammocks in the trees. Can we have a dog here? What if the art room had glitter walls?" Harland would laugh and nod, but Faye would take notes, genuinely considering every wild suggestion. One warm afternoon in May, Harland stood outside the new greenhouse, wiping sweat from the back of his neck. Faye was inside, planting herbs in the raised beds with Elodie, who had declared herself head of basil. He leaned against the frame, watching them. The sun lit the glass around them, casting soft reflections across the dirt. Faye laughed at something Elodie said, brushing soil from her cheek with the back of her hand. It hit him quietly. He loved her. Not just in the way he'd felt months ago when they kissed in her gallery, not in the way he'd tried to reason through when she told him her real name, but in the way you knew someone had become home without asking permission. He hadn't said it yet, not out loud, but he would, soon. That night, they sat outside under string lights draped between the trees. The smell of grilled vegetables lingered in the air, and soft music played from an old speaker balanced on a cooler. Volunteers had gone home. Elodie was asleep in the loft, wrapped in a blanket with a flashlight still clutched in her hand. Faye passed him a glass of wine and leaned back in her chair, her bare feet stretched toward the fire pit. "You ever think about how fast this all happened?" she asked quietly. "Every day. Does it scare you?" He took a long sip. "Only when I realize how much I don't want to lose it." She turned toward him. "You won't. You don't get it, Faye. People like me don't end up in places like this. We don't get women like you. We don't get futures that look like this." Her voice was calm, but her eyes held heat. "Then maybe it's time people like you did." He set down his glass. "I love you." She didn't blink. "I know. You've known for a while, haven't you? Since you fixed that busted sink in my kitchen without a word." He laughed, the sound low and surprised. "I love you too, Harland," she said. "I think I did before I even knew your last name." He reached for her hand, holding it across the small table. "I want to build more than just walls and roofs with you." Faye's eyes glistened. "So build it." The summer unfolded like a dream in motion. The retreat opened under the name Marigold Haven. and families began to arrive. Single mothers with tired eyes and hopeful smiles, fathers with calloused hands and quiet kids. Artists who had lost their footing, teachers burned out from overcrowded schools, children who hadn't seen a green field in months. It wasn't polished, but it was alive. And then, one evening in late July, Harland stood under the arbor behind the greenhouse, dressed in a simple navy jacket and a white shirt Elodie insisted she help iron. Lanterns swung gently in the breeze, and the scent of honeysuckle filled the air. Faye walked toward him, wearing a soft ivory dress with a thin ribbon tied at her waist. No veil, no bouquet, just her smiling like the sun had chosen her face to land on. They didn't have a crowd. Just a few close friends, volunteers, and Elodie, who stood proudly holding a small notebook she'd written the vows in for both of them. Harland took Faye's hands as she stepped beside him. The officiant gave a quiet nod. "I never thought I'd be a man who stood in a place like this," Harland said. "But you saw something in me before I saw it myself. You made space for me where there wasn't any. And you gave my daughter a world I never thought I could give her. I promised to fight for this, for you, for us." Faye's voice didn't waver. "You never treated me like I was fragile, even when I was breaking. You didn't ask for anything, but gave me everything. You've built more than just homes, you've built a life I want to live in. And I will love you every day we're lucky enough to have." Lodi handed them the rings with both palms open like treasure. They slipped them on, kissed softly, and the crowd small as it was burst into cheers. Later that evening, as the stars emerged and the music played, Harland found Faye sitting alone on the front steps of the retreat, her dress bunched slightly at her knees, her hair loose. He sat beside her, his shoulder brushing hers. "Still think it happened fast?" he asked. She smiled. "No. I think it happened exactly when it was supposed to." He looked out across the field, the lights twinkling in the distance, laughter spilling from the open windows. "You know, I never believed in fate, but I do believe in boxes." Faye laughed, leaning her head on his shoulder. "You mean the ones I nearly dropped all over the sidewalk?" He nodded. "Best collapse I ever stopped." They sat in silence for a while, watching the place they'd built come to life around them, a haven, a home not made of wealth or luck, but of two people who found each other at the exact moment they needed to, and never let go. The lake shimmered under the late autumn sun, its surface calm and glassy, untouched by even the gentlest wind. Harland stood at the edge of the dock, his tool belt forgotten on the bench behind him, watching Elodie paddle a canoe with another girl from the retreat. Laughter bounced across the stillness, light and high and full of something he hadn't realized he missed: peace. Behind him, the retreat was alive. The final renovation to the East Wing had finished 2 weeks ago, and families now rotated through every month, each group bringing new stories, new faces, new beginnings. The kitchen hummed with the scent of fresh bread and roasted squash, and someone was playing an out-of-tune guitar near the garden, badly but with heart. He heard footsteps before he saw her. "You didn't come to breakfast," Faye said, her voice quiet but steady. "I didn't want to interrupt," he replied, not turning around. "You seemed deep in conversation with that donor from Montreal. He was trying to convince me to expand to Canada." Harland glanced at her now. She wore a pale blue sweater and jeans faded from too many washes. Her hair was pulled into a low ponytail and there was a streak of flour on her cheek. "Are you tempted?" he asked. She stepped beside him. "I'm tempted by a lot of things. Doesn't mean I'll chase all of them." He looked back toward the lake. "This is enough, you know, what we've done here." "It's more than enough. I know it is," she said, "but sometimes I wonder if we could do even more, for others, I mean," he exhaled slowly. "I just got used to the idea that we made this work, that I belong here." She turned fully to him. "You don't just belong here, Harland. You're the reason it works." The words settled between them like warm sunlight, quiet and full of weight. He didn't answer right away. Faye reached for his hand, her fingers brushing his knuckles. "There's something I've been thinking about," she said. He glanced at her, brow raised. "That always ends with me carrying lumber or climbing a ladder. Not this time." She hesitated, then pulled a folded paper from her back pocket. It was worn at the edges, like she'd been carrying it for days. He took it slowly, unfolding it to reveal a sketch not architectural but personal. A small cabin with a wraparound porch, tucked beneath tall trees, a swing hanging from a branch off to the side. There were faint outlines of Elodie's handwriting in the corner, scribbled in purple marker, "Our forever house." "She drew that?" he asked. Faye nodded. "She said she wanted a place for us, just us, not part of the retreat, not where people come and go, just something that's ours." He stared at the drawing for a long moment, then folded it again carefully. "Where would we build it?" he asked. "There's a clearing past the orchard." "You know the one," he did. "It was quiet there, peaceful, he'd always liked it." "I think it's time," she said. "We've built so much for other people, I want to build something for us." He nodded. "Then we will." That night, after dinner had ended and the retreat quieted into soft murmurs and the distant creak of beds settling, he found her sitting on the back porch with a cup of tea. The stars above were bright and scattered, and the air smelled of cedar and smoke. He sat beside her, taking her free hand. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked. She tilted her head. "Miss what? The city, the noise, the money, the control." She didn't answer immediately. "I miss pieces of it," she said finally. "Good coffee, museums. The feeling of power when you walk into a room and everyone already knows your name." He watched her carefully. "But," she continued, "I don't miss who I had to be to live there. I don't miss the weight of expectations. Or pretending I didn't care when people saw right through me." He brushed his thumb over her knuckles. "They never saw you." "No," she said softly. "But you did." They sat in silence for a long time until the fire in the pit crackled low and the stars shifted position above them. By winter, the cabin was underway. Elodie insisted it have a skylight over her bed and a nook for reading with a beanbag chair shaped like a bear. Harland made each window frame by hand, sanding the edges until they fit with satisfying precision. Faye designed the kitchen layout, choosing a deep farmhouse sink and a vintage stove she found at a salvage yard in Kingston. They worked side by side, elbow to elbow, their hands often splattered with paint or dust, their conversations drifting between deadlines and dreamscapes. One afternoon, as snow began falling in lazy, wet flakes, Harland stood on the porch of the unfinished cabin, watching Elodie make a snow angel in the clearing. Faye joined him, tucking her gloved hand into his. "She told me she wants to stay here forever," Faye said. He smiled faintly. "She's not the only one. It's strange," she added. "I used to think forever was a chain, now it feels like a gift." He turned to her fully. "You gave me more than a forever, Faye. You gave me a life." Her eyes glistened, but she didn't drop her gaze. "You gave me mine, too." That spring, they opened a second retreat location in a coastal town 2 hours away, not as large, not as developed, but full of the same heart. Harland trained a new team, taught them how to listen, how to build with purpose. Faye hired a small group of women who had once been guests of the retreat and wanted to give back. They didn't call it expansion, they called it growth. When summer rolled in again, the cabin was finished. It wasn't grand, but it was perfect. On the first night they slept there, Elodie curled into bed with a book of fairy tales, the skylight above her lit by the moon. Harland and Faye stood in the kitchen, barefoot on the cool tile, sharing a bowl of cherries and speaking in whispers. "You ever think about what comes next?" he asked. She leaned against the counter. "Every day. And I want to grow old with you in this house," she said. "I want to watch Elodie become everything she dreams of. I want to keep building, not just places, but stories, people, us." He stepped closer, setting the bowl aside. "Then let's do that." "I think we already are." Outside, the wind rustled the trees. Inside, their home was quiet, warm, and alive. Years later, when people asked how they built it all, 2 retreats, a home, a new kind of future, they always gave different answers. Harland said it started with a box on a sidewalk. Faye said it started with a man who saw her before she saw herself. But they both agreed on one thing. Real love isn't about where you meet. It's about what you build after. And they were still building.